Hey everybody, welcome to Love and Relo, the voice of the relocation industry. I am your host, Ben Cross, and I am so blessed and honored and excited to be here with my friend Linden Houghtby, Client Services Manager, Global Client Services Manager for WHR Group in Singapore, of all places. Linden, what's going on?
Not a lot, just here enjoying my Thursday morning. I know it's everybody else's like Wednesday afternoon at this point, but Ben, happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
What time? Okay, I always have to do this because I'm like time zones are messing me up right now. What time is it in Singapore?
It is 4 a.m.
What? 4 a.m. Like you're all like chipper and like, hey, good morning to you. Like you got the
I've
paper
got my
open, your orange
coffee.
juice. I bet you do got your coffee. Oh my goodness. Good for
Yeah,
you. God bless. That's amazing. 4 a.m. And what's the temperature? I heard Singapore is hot.
it
Is it
is.
hot? Is it
It
hot
is
all the time?
hot. It's hot all the time. I don't think it ever gets below like 75 degrees, even in the middle of the night. So it's high 70s right now. By this afternoon, it'll be close to 90. To me, it feels a lot like August in Wisconsin. So it's getting up into like the mid to upper 80s to 90, and there's a chance of thunderstorms like every afternoon.
Oh my gosh, that's awesome. It reminds me of Florida. It would
Yeah.
get super hot. It would rain. It would actually rain mid-morning and then mid-afternoon, cool down for like 30 minutes, and then get just sauna after
Yeah.
that. So very cool, very cool. Hey everybody, if you are watching right now, go ahead and hit that like button right now, throw a comment in there. Let us know if you got any questions about what it's like being on assignment. I mean, I think this is so cool because I've been following your blogs
Yeah.
on on LinkedIn.
Mhm.
And I think they're so cool. And I think the idea of someone on assignment who's in relocation
Mhm.
is fascinating to me.
Yeah.
What's that experience been like for you?
Well, in general, I would say it's been a great experience. I am so thankful that I'm having the opportunity to do this as a part of my career. Because to your point, Ben, working in the relocation industry, we talk to folks who are going through this all the time. And something that just really resonated with me going through this experience is, as a relocation counselor, when we're talking to transferees and assignees, feel like we often make the comment and say relocating is like a full-time job on top of your full-time job, and I didn't truly grasp what that meant until I was doing it myself. And you're working and you're busy and you're doing all of that, and you're also trying to like open your bank accounts, find a new home, all of those different pieces. So it's just given me even a greater appreciation and expanded my perspective of what this process is like, what our transferees and assignees are going through. And obviously, I'm doing this in such a unique time with, moving internationally in the middle of a pandemic. Who wouldn't want to do that? So that has just added to all of it, and just it's been quite the experience. I've really enjoyed being able to share parts of it through the blog on LinkedIn. I just wanted to take the opportunity to share some of like the personal side of things, some of the the joys of going through quarantine and all of that, with all of my connections and colleagues in the industry, to help us just really remember that human side of all of this, and what all of these folks are going through as we're working with them on, maybe we're working on their household goods move or just one piece, but just trying to I guess remind us all what all is going into this.
Yeah, no, you bring up so many good points, and it's so interesting. And guys, leave your comments. I want to hear your questions also for Linden as well about her experience. If you've been checking out her blog, I want to throw it in the comments there. Let me know who you are, where you are, what you're up to. Go ahead and check in. We got some people coming in here as well. Let's honor those real quick, and then we'll get to a couple of my questions for you, because this is such an interesting topic for me. Tim Quirk checking in. Hello, Linden and Ben from hot and sunny Western New York. What up, Timmy? Sue Carey. Hello, Linden. Looks like your
Hey,
relocation
Sue.
is agreeing with you. That's nice, Sue. Awesome to hear from you. Tuning in from London, eager to learn from Linden. Who is that? Oh, it's Vivi. Hey, Vivi, how are you? Awesome. From Alta Vita, checking in there. Alan King, hi, Ben and Linden, checking in from Germany. Love Singapore. Awesome. Awesome, awesome, awesome. Let's see here. Stacy Huff, hi, Ben and Linden. I'm excited to hear more about Linden's experience of being an assignee for sure. Yeah, leave your questions too. Tim, Sue, Vivi, Alan. Love to hear your thoughts. Vinny Valverde, he's been a few places. Hi, Ben and Linden. Cheers from Portland. So, Linden, we've all been enjoying your blog. I want to ask before I kind of get into like the assignment itself, what made you write a blog about your experience? I think it's so cool.
I would say it's largely because of all of the questions and things like that. You know, starting. So I guess taking a step back, we were planning to do all of this. I was supposed to be, you know, leaving the US and heading to Switzerland to start everything for WHR's EMEA office. I was supposed to be doing that in April of 2020. So obviously everything got put on hold with the pandemic and got pushed out. But before I left, you know, that's when we were all still on our normal relocation mobility like conference circuit, and I was talking to all of my, you know, friends and colleagues in the industry, and everyone, you know, was like, oh, please share updates, we want to hear what's going on, we want to know what you're doing, keep us updated. And so it was at that point that I decided that doing kind of like these blog posts through LinkedIn was probably the easiest way to keep everyone updated and to be able to share my experience.
Oh, that makes perfect sense. It's like when you have kids and everybody wants an update and you just end up sending a Christmas newsletter. It's like, yeah, everybody's taller. We're fine. Merry Christmas. There you go.
Right. And easier to just blast it out there rather than, you know, having the same conversation 20 times. For all that I would love to be connecting with everyone individually. It's just, it's challenging with schedules and time zones and all of that. So yeah, and then once it started and I started really going through it, I just had that perspective change of, you know, going from the relocation professional to the assignee experience. And also just writing about it has helped me to process some of it. You know, there's definitely been challenges in this process, and it's been kind of cathartic and helped me to think through like what has been good, what has been a challenge by writing about it. And then I want to share all of that.
That's so cool. That's so let's talk about the challenges, because, you know, a friend of mine invited me to go visit Singapore last year, and it was like one of my 5 goals for 2020. And of course that didn't happen. But I'm like, I've never been overseas. Like, I've been to the Bahamas, I've been to Canada, I've never been to Europe, I've never been to Asia. I want to go so bad. And I always talk to my wife. I'm like, yeah, honey, let's go live in Singapore or something. And she's like, so not about it, right? She's so freaked out. She's like, oh my gosh, I wouldn't know how to, you know, go to the bathroom. I wouldn't know how to find the bathroom. I wouldn't know how to order food. I wouldn't know how to do it. You know, so what have been some of the challenges? Maybe some of the ones that we think about, but maybe some of the ones we haven't, or maybe that you didn't anticipate.
Sure. Well, I guess I'll start by saying, so before I got to Singapore, I spent 2 months in Basel, Switzerland, where WHR is opening our other office. And that was my first time, you know, moving abroad. I was only there short term, but still consider that a bit of a move. And
yeah, it's a short-term assignment. There you go, 2 months. I mean, hey, yeah.
Right. And so in Switzerland, there was definitely the challenge of the language barrier. So I'll be honest, I don't speak German, and I definitely don't speak Swiss German, which is a very different language in and of itself. So when I was in Switzerland, I found that grocery shopping became like a source of stress for me, because I normally love grocery shopping. I usually
that's
go
like
in
my happy place. Like, if I'm in the grocery store, I get the big cart. I don't care what I'm going for. I always get the big cart and I load up one. Anyway.
And I go in with my list, like I'm organized, I'm on a mission, I know what I'm doing. And then I was in Basel and going grocery shopping, and I didn't know like what I was going to be able to find. I'm walking around with like Google Translate up on my phone all the time, trying to confirm, like, am I buying what I think I'm buying? Because not all the packaging was in English. And even just some of like the different, I don't even know, like approaches to doing things. Like you don't weigh your produce at checkout. You have to do it in the produce section. And some of those little pieces. And when you're doing that and navigating in a different language was just really stressful and challenging.
That's so interesting too, because you're talking about like how like relocating is another job on top of your job, right? So here you are opening an office in Switzerland, also having to like move your like handle the move over there. I know you had great support, but like having to like deal with that situation. And then you don't speak the language or like really have the cultural cues down probably.
Yep.
Like how many different unsettling things at once to process. And it's so funny because like we know these things like mentally, like we under like yeah I know all the things, right? Because we're in reload, but like it's so different when you do it and you're in that mode. Just can't even comprehend.
Yeah. One thing that I thought of while I was going through that is how all of those little stressors have kind of a compounding effect. And it kind of just makes things more emotional, or at least for me, it did. Then it's just one little thing. And then when something like grocery shopping, where you're used to that being kind of like your zen, your happy place of like, I got this, this is, a part of my regular routine. Then when that gets completely disrupted and is no longer a nice, easy routine and is a challenge, it honestly can be a lot. And some of those little things end up hitting you harder than you expect them to. Honestly, like the work and all of the stress related to work, like I guess that was easy. That
was that the easy part because you already did that? Like you've been doing that for years and it's like, we're just going to do what we did over here, but we're going to do it over there. And like,
pretty much.
Like people are looking to you, you have the answers. Yeah.
Yeah. And I had the plan. I knew what I needed to do. The work side was the constant. That was, for all that I was opening a new office and doing new things for WHR, that was consistent. I knew what to expect. It was some of the other pieces that were just more challenging than I anticipated. But
so that's Switzerland.
Sorry. I was going to switch to Singapore too. So.
Yeah. So before we go to Singapore, I want to catch all these people that are coming in right now. We got a bunch of people coming in. It looked like LinkedIn was a little slow on the. Hey, all right. Happy St. Patrick's Day. We got a little St. Patrick's Day interlude. Where were you a year ago? Thank you, Tim Quirk, for bringing this up. Not my finest moment, but I do have to note that I was incredibly coordinated. My hair matched my tie. Yeah, I mean, listen, the pigtails are underrated. They're not understood by everyone, but if you get it, you get it. It's just one of those things. So this was early Love and Relo a year ago. Thanks, Tim. I think we've had enough. This is what happens when you got guest producers. Okay, things just get real weird. Sorry, everybody. No, thanks. My priest laughed his butt off. That's great. I want to hear your questions for Linden, though. I'm going to riff and just follow my own curiosity here. But I see Sarah checking in. I'd love to see your questions too, Sarah. Joanna, Tim Nowak, what's up? Hi, Linden. Greetings from snowy Denver. I have so much admiration for your journey.
Thanks.
I'm going to turn this into a question. Did you learn things about yourself in this process?
Absolutely. Yes. Oh man, but that's hard to articulate. What? So
I know these questions. I love asking hard questions and watching people like I don't know how I feel about this question.
Yeah. I definitely have learned a lot about myself, and I will admit, I feel like this has probably come through a little bit, even with the grocery story. I like to have routines and to be organized. I'm kind of your stereotypical type A person. I like to know what's going on. So this has required me to acknowledge that there's going to be a lot of things happening with today's world and all of our constant changes. There's going to be things that I can't plan for. I need to be flexible. I need to be able to adapt. So I've definitely learned that. But it's also been really good for me in a lot of ways. I've learned I can do this alone. So I moved here by myself. My fiance is still in Milwaukee. which
He's in
is brought
Milwaukee,
on.
and you've lived in 3
Yes.
continents in the last year. And he's in Milwaukee, like, hey, it's still cold here, Linden. How's everything going with you? I can see these questions. How are you doing? It's still cold here in Milwaukee.
Yep. I get the random like pictures of snow, like it snowed the other day, and it's like, what is it? What's happening? Why is it snowing again? So yeah, there's been a lot of that, and just learning that. So I consider myself to be an extrovert, as a lot of us in this industry are. We're very social people, but I've also had to push myself outside of my comfort zone, and trying to build those social networks in the middle of a pandemic is a challenge. And so yeah, I've learned a lot. I think this has been a great growth experience of, what are those things that are really important? What can I focus on that I can control? And what do I really need to just accept and trust in the process?
Yeah, no, that's really, really smart. I mean, I observe that too, from what you're saying. It seems like you going into this, we're really good at planning everything out and executing on the plan. But then it's always like, okay, what happens when you can't plan for everything? There's things outside your control, right? And I remember, when I was, in my development journey, one of my bosses told me, you need to be more comfortable with ambiguity. And I'm like, what does that mean? And he's like, well, that's exactly what I'm talking about. Like, you can't know everything. You can't control everything, And now people that work with me will say, maybe I'm too comfortable with ambiguity. But I think that's like a self-awareness thing that's really cool.
Yeah.
And that's the flip side of these assignments, right? It's like how much, not only it grows the skills in the job, but it also grows the person to be ready for the next step too. Right.
Yeah, absolutely. It's definitely a mix of that professional and personal growth, because you're going to face challenges. There's no way to plan for everything that can come up during an assignment. And I feel like if 2020 taught us nothing else, it's that you can't plan for everything. You never know what's going to happen, and you need to be able to adapt. And that has been even more the case with moving, and moving internationally during all of this. So I'm excited to see where this journey takes me, and what other things I learned about myself. I'm still, I was thinking about it the other day. I've been out of the US for about 4.5 months at this point. So still a good chunk of the year left. So excited to see what else I learn.
So I want to talk about Singapore. I also want to talk about the social networking. I also want to get to all of these questions that we have here, because we got some great questions from Kathy and Kirsty's checking in. Kirsty, Erica, Valerie, I'd love to hear your questions as well. Brittany, love to hear your questions. Matt checking. Steve Miser checking in. Hey, driver. But I wanted to stay on this just for one more moment as we talk about kind of observations from you. So you've been in Relo and mobility for how many years now, Linden?
Over 8 years.
Okay, 8 years. So you've been in the business for quite a while. You've worked your way up. You've kind of seen it from kind of like different angles. See, now you're opening offices overseas, which is super cool. How does your own personal experience inform the way that you may lead mobility activities in the future? Because now you're stepping into this kind of almost this kind of strategic role, and this kind of like kind of a leadership kind of role that has like a lot of real leadership tentacles and everything.
Yeah.
How does your own assignment influence the way that you think, your own philosophy about how to manage relocation?
Yeah, I'd say to me the biggest thing is we need to look at the big picture and all of these different things that are going on, but also just remembering that at the core of this, focus on the individual. It is such an individual experience. And I think to me, it's just reminded me in some ways even more of the importance of taking the time to get to know the individuals involved, what really is important to them. And I know that's something that we talk about all the time is remember, these are people, we need to be empathetic, we need to embrace all of that. But I think going through this, it's just made it even more important to me that we really do take the time to get to know some of those details, find out what are they concerned about? What are their greatest, their fears with this process?
Yeah.
And embrace and accept those.
Is there something you think you'd ask your team to do differently, knowing what you know now as an assignee? Like maybe it's, something tactical? Because I think it's so funny because I was kind of like going kind of broad and macro with it, and you actually kind of went super narrow and micro with it. No, which is like probably the right answer because you were the transferee. So like, this is going to be like super like voice of the customer, voice of the transferee. But is there something like tactically maybe we can learn, that maybe we should be doing as an industry to care for our transferees in a better way? Maybe like I'm kind of putting you on the spot here, but I'm just kind of curious if there's something you would think of, maybe advice you could give us.
I think to me, a lot of what it would be is even just thinking about our own experiences and coming up with suggestions for, for our assignees and for our transferees. Preparing for a move, and Ben, I know you moved recently as well. Like it can be an overwhelming experience, and getting advice from people of some of those small things. Like as I was preparing for this, I was reading different blogs and, even working in the industry, I was like, okay, somebody tell me some like the personal things. And like one of my biggest recommendations now for someone who is moving, especially if they're moving internationally, if they're moving alone or leaving loved ones, back home, things like that, would be to like print out photos. I talked about that in one of my blog posts, and I know that sounds
why print out photos? Why photos of what and why?
So before I left, I like just printed out some random photos of like me and my fiance, me and my family. Just got like cheap prints from like Amazon prints or whatever. And before I left, I was like, oh, these might be nice to look at. Maybe I'll remember to actually look at these rather than just scrolling through the like thousands of photos on my phone and things like that. And then once I found my housing here in Singapore and was moving in, I just bought some cheap frames at IKEA, and now I have these photos out in my apartment. And the mental and emotional impact that had was profound. Like this whole project cost me maybe $20. And I would highly recommend to anyone moving, consider doing something like that. Have photos printed out. Because now when I see them, they just make me happy and they make me smile. It just takes away a little bit of that stress. It makes me feel closer to my friends and family who are back home. And it's something that's so small, it's so simple, but it's been incredibly impactful. So I think just thinking of those little pieces of like, what are some like tips and advice that maybe we've experienced or we've heard from others that we can share with our transferees and assignees, to focus some on that people side of it. I think we, as an industry, are good at orchestrating and organizing, all of the logistics, all of like the big pieces that have to be done. But then just thinking about like, what are some of those little tips that we can give to help people manage some of that, like the personal, emotional side, because then that does have an impact on mental health and
I do. I love that.
Yeah.
I love that. No, the tactical stuff too. I mean, those tips are great, and I've never heard that one. I mean, being in this business as long as I have, I've never heard that one. So, that's awesome. Janet checking in here. We got a bunch of people checking in. Let's see, Joanna Remmel. Hi, Ben and Linden. What's up, Joanna? Sarah. Hi, Linden. Right, checking in. Everybody misses you.
Yeah.
Anka, thank you for waking up this early. Excited for the conversation. Do you find that your times are different? Like, are you waking up early a lot now?
It's a mix. I have more late nights. Like tonight, to be honest, I think I have meetings scheduled from like 8:30 to 10:30 at night. So my schedule has definitely shifted. Being in Singapore and in the APAC region, even like just talking to other colleagues here, it seems like here you often have like those really odd off-hour calls. So it's not at all uncommon for me to have some very late meetings, especially if you're trying to involve all three regions in a call. If it's just me in the US, I do those in the morning. But if we've got to loop Europe in as well, that generally means some late night calls for me.
I hear you on that. Actually, we're doing the innovation Altavita Innovation Summit, and
Mm,
we're doing the APAC one at a different time because it's just so
yeah.
far off, right? On the 23rd, so you might want to check that out. It should be good. But we're trying to do it on your time versus our time. We've got some really cool questions coming in here, and I want to
Great.
get to all of them here. Keep those questions coming. I love audience questions.
Yeah.
Is there any question you want to ask the audience that we could also get a poll going? Is there anything you want to ask them, by the way?
Oh boy, I don't know.
Think about that.
I'll
I'm
think
gonna
about
come
it.
back to you. Yeah, you think
Okay.
about it. Kathy, hi, Linden from Living Abroad. Val checking in from Deluxe Suites from H-Town, representing the Midwest. Happy St. Patty's Day. Shout out to all the Irish and faux Irish and partially Irish people out there. Are you Irish at all, Linden?
A little,
Everybody's a little Irish.
right?
Is there any St. Patrick's Day celebrations in Singapore? Is this a thing?
There's bars that sell Guinness, and so I've seen some like signs about Guinness, and that's been
It'll
really
do.
it. Yeah.
Yeah,
It's been something. Admittedly, I did not do anything to celebrate St. Patrick's Day. I thought about it, and then, I bought like potatoes and cabbage. I was going to cook dinner. And then by that point last night, I was no longer motivated to cook. So
Yeah. They're like, who's the American with the stinky food over in the apartment down the hall, right? Isn't that funny? Now we're the expat, right, with the stinky food. Like, it's so funny.
We're the weird ones who, have weird food expectations and things like that.
This is great. Okay, we got a great question from Kathy, and I'm going to take all your questions here. Kathy says, what has been the hardest part of expanding the business in another country? And why don't you set the table for us? Because I think some people don't understand like WHR Group's growth and everything. I'm a big fan of you guys. So go ahead and set the table for us.
Absolutely. So WHR was founded like 26 years ago, something like that. And really up until late 2020, we were running everything out of Wisconsin. And we were managing, global programs, coordinating moves in like the APAC region, EMEA, all over from Wisconsin. And as we wanted to continue to grow and expand our global business, we really just realized, we needed to be in the time zones because these crazy hour calls don't work well. It's a challenge, and we didn't want to do that to our transferees and assignees. We wanted to make sure that we were really available for them. So as a part of that, we are in the process, and we've opened 2 new offices, one in Basel, Switzerland, to be our operations hub for the EMEA region. So they're covering all of the moves within and into Europe, Africa, and the Middle East. And then here in Singapore to, cover the APAC region. So we wanted to make sure that we do have like these local operations. So this is where we're going to have teams of relocation counselors and associates working with our assignees and our transferees on a daily basis. Nice. So that's kind of where we are and what we're doing, which it's been great. It's been a bit of a whirlwind in a lot of ways.
Have your clients really enjoyed the fact that you guys are in region now? You have a tri-regional approach? Because you've had some really big multinational clients. I mean, some big ones. Right. And so, I mean, did they was that kind of the push? Did they kind of push you there? Were you like, hey, you know what? We just have enough critical mass now where we need to put down roots, or was it kind of a growth thing, or just kind of? It was a little of both.
It was, we feel like we're ready to do this. We know this needs to be our next step to continue growing as an organization. And also had that feedback from our clients of like, we'd love to give you more business. We want to expand this, but, in order to get all the stakeholders on board, it'd be a lot easier if you had that tri-regional approach and had the international offices established. And also, to be honest, there's been times where we've gone through an RFP for a global program, and like you get down to the end and there's that one stakeholder who's really concerned and like, well, you don't have someone in that time zone. How are you going to do it? And we could explain our process and all of that. But it was really hard to get over that apprehension from some stakeholders. So all of those different pieces combined is what really pushed us and drove us to opening these offices.
So then to Kathy's point about kind of like opening a business in another country, how hard was that? And what were some of the what are some of the challenges for those of us who've never really done business outside the US, let's say, or outside of our home country?
I will say I was not heavily involved in like the legal side of things and setting up entities and doing all of that. That was luckily not my responsibility. But my understanding from that is that things in Singapore were pretty straightforward. This is a pretty easy place to do business because it is such a global business hub. I will say Switzerland was a bit more challenging, and from, you know, an immigration standpoint, for us to be able to go there, because with WHR, our culture is so important to us and our service approach, that we wanted to bring someone from our Wisconsin office into each of these offices so that we could make sure that we really bring that culture with us and find ways to kind of meld the WHR culture with the local cultures. So that's definitely been one challenge of finding ways of like, how do we maintain our company culture while acknowledging that there are some pieces of it that will need to adapt and to flex based on the local culture and the culture of the individuals we're hiring in the new locations. So that's been one challenge.
Well, and that's so interesting. I just want to talk about that just for a moment, because I mean, that is the value proposition for relocation. That is why we exist as an industry, is because it's important to kind of merge the cultures and merge the skill sets and bring over the continuity, right? Otherwise, you're not two separate companies operating under one logo, but they're actually one company with a continuity of culture and operational standards and things like that. And, you know, it's so interesting as we go into this work from home, work from anywhere, you know, is relo really important, you know, or what's going to happen to our jobs as relocation professionals, things like that. I mean, these are the kind of questions that we all ponder every day, it seems like, on this show at least. And it's interesting to see not only micro level, Linden's experience as an assignee, but macro level, relocation management company strategy here on saying, okay, we actually believe this is important, because there's kind of been a running joke in Relo that Relo doesn't relocate, right? Like all these jobs for relocation and global mobility, like relocation is not usually is more often than not a benefit that's actually offered to relocation professionals. So it's like, well, if we're not buying relocation, why are we selling relocation, right? So it's interesting to see that this was important to WHR Group to actually have kind of boots on the ground from the home office and have that continuity. I find it very interesting. Yeah.
And I think you made some really good points about, you know, in this industry, we move people, but you're right. We often don't move. You know, we're not relocating. We're not always going on assignments and doing all of that. But I think not only, as I mentioned, you know, from the culture perspective, but I think it's also just, it's good for us to have some of those reminders and to hear some of those personal sides. You know, we hear it from our assignees, but sometimes, I don't know, maybe it just gives some additional validity to comments and to feedback when it's coming from someone within the industry.
Love it. We've got some great questions here. I think this one's from Vivi. Hi, Linden. Are you planning to hire local talent, or is WHR Group sending more experts from Milwaukee? What are the pros and cons in local versus expat? This is a perfect question for what we were just talking about. As far as,
exactly. So I would say we're hiring local talent, both in Switzerland and in Singapore. And that was really our goal all along. So we sent expats to both locations, but the plan is that the expats will be kind of like that short-term bridge. And we want to build those local teams of local hires in both locations. And there's a number of reasons for that, you know.
Well, go into some of those reasons, right? Because it's not just about mirroring time zones, right? Because I mean, that's kind of superficial. I mean, there's so many more layers there, and and cultural economics. I mean, there's all sorts of things. What are your thoughts on some of that stuff?
Absolutely. So a big one is the cultural side of it. And we do cultural trainings for our counselors and associates and, our internal folks who are working with international assignees, because that is so important to have that background and that knowledge. But when we're hiring and looking at local team members, they just have a greater understanding of local cultures. And, an example in Switzerland is, as we're hiring there, yes, we're hiring local talent, but a lot of them are not Swiss originally. They have moved within Europe, they've moved within the region. And so they bring a lot of that perspective. And that's what we're working on here in Singapore as well, of, building a local team who has a really good, knowledge and understanding of culture, not just in Singapore, but other parts of Southeast Asia and the APAC region in general. So we're working to find, and it is a bit of an art, and we aren't going to say we have the perfect solution, but we want to have the expats who are in these offices initially to help bring and build that WHR culture and that continuity of service, and instill that in our local teams. But then the goal is for the local teams to run with it. We are,
and that's what I was going to ask. Are you permanently relocated there? Is Linden going to be, Singapore, manager and, forever and ever? Or is it like, let's do a skill transfer and there's like a 12-month plan, or, what's that look like?
Exactly it. Yeah. That's pretty much it. Is the goal is that, I am here to do that culture and that skill transfer, and to, make sure that the local team is ready to be running things here before I move back to the US. And that's the same thing we're doing in Switzerland. We have our Wisconsin folks here on assignment. We're not permanent transfers. Our goal is to be here to help get everything up and running, to hire, to train, to do all of that. And then we will be going back to the US. And part of that even just aligns with a lot of what we hear in the industry in general. Like, assignments are not cheap. It is not cheap to take
right, because that's what we always hear.
US.
I mean, we know that better than anybody in Relo, right?
Exactly.
Like, hey, it's expensive, So it's like,
it's expensive. If nothing else, you look at the tax side of it. And as a US citizen, no matter where you are, Uncle Sam wants his cut, and you owe US taxes no matter what. So yeah, that's definitely a part of it as well. And that's why we are taking the approach of doing, sending a couple of people on expat assignments, and with the hope that, in the next year or so, we'll be transitioning everything to the local teams.
We've got some really cool strategic questions here, because I think a lot of our global mobility community is either, as practitioners, is either placing people overseas and is making these decisions, or as service providers trying to mirror our clients' needs and being where they are, right? Supporting them where they are. So we have another question kind of along the same lines as a follow-up. How can you make sure that the WHR group culture will be maintained by the local team when you're gone?
And I think this is something that has been kind of a challenge, Ben, to your point of, everyone's been going remote and working from home for the majority of the last year. And how do we do it in those settings as well? And I think something that's just really important is maintaining that regular contact. Something that, I talk about, yes, I have meetings at odd hours now and things like that. That's probably going to continue when I'm back in the US, because I will continue to have regular meetings and touch bases with the teams in Singapore and in Switzerland, because I think staying connected is really key to keeping our culture alive. WHR, our culture it's very people-centric. We're all about being empathetic and, having that high touch. And I think we need to make sure we're doing that internally as well. I think we're really great about, being empathetic for our transferees and our assignees, and focusing on high touch service when we're looking externally and at our clients and our transferees. But we need to do that internally as well, because how are we going to have really happy, productive counselors? It's by showing them that empathy, by, focusing on their experience so that they can provide a great experience for our transferees and assignees.
Love it. Love it. Last strategic question, then we're going to have some fun here. Which regions are you opening next? You opened 2 offices in a year overseas. All right. It looks like worldwide domination over here. I don't know. It's like, no, but do you have any plans in the near future to any more? No, they're not going to just bounce you around maybe to the Caribbean next. Who knows?
Right. I'd be up for that. If the WHR wants to send me to the Caribbean for a year, sure. But no, we're not planning to open any other offices. We are, we're going with the tri-regional approach. Our U.S. office manages everything for the Americas. And, we've got the language skills and everything there. So we're hoping that these 3 offices will have us covered.
Nice. Let's see here. We got some great questions. This is great. Some more stuff about your experience. Let's get back to your experience here a little bit. Brittany here, Brittany's got a temp housing background here, and Brittany's been on the show too. What up, Brittany? Says, are there any recommendations you have to help a transferee feel settled in a temporary space? You talked about the photo frames, but what else can you, maybe while they're in temp housing, any ideas there?
My recommendation would be to unpack. I'm
looking at boxes all over my house still right now.
And it can be kind of unsettling, and it makes you, or it made me feel at least very transient when I was living out of a suitcase, or even just like had my suitcases there in sight all day, every day. So my recommendation really would be to unpack, even if you don't unpack everything, because you probably don't need all of the stuff you packed with you for, that month or 2 months that you're going to be in a temporary space. But take advantage of being there. Try to put things away, hide your suitcases as best as you can. Because I found that to be the most impactful of, feeling settled and less transient when the suitcases were gone. Yeah,
you see that suitcase and you think you're going somewhere. And it's like, no, you're not going anywhere. You're here for on time. I mean, I even do that on like long business trips. I go to like ERC. I get in on like a Tuesday night. I know I'm not leaving on Friday. I'll put all my stuff away in the, in the dressers or what have you. And I'm not normally a neat person. Let's see here. Alan King, how challenging has it been to establish a social circle in Singapore?
So that definitely has been a challenge. I will fully admit that's something I'm still working on. So here in Singapore, I will say we're very lucky in terms of the state of the pandemic and restrictions and everything. We have to wear masks all the time, which I think is the case for most people. And but bars and restaurants are open, and we can get together in groups of up to 8 people. So it's very exciting. That gives us more options. But even with that, it's still challenging to go out and meet people. I wrote one blog post about this. Normally I would tell assignees, get involved with like internations and these different groups where they're hosting events. But now there's fewer events being hosted, and when they are having them, they're capped at 8 people. And when you're putting that out to thousands, that fills up very quickly. So it's really hard to get into any of those like expat groups that are happening. So I will say I have been relying on like expat Facebook groups. I think I'm a member of like 4 or 5, which is a little overwhelming. I don't know if I'd recommend being a part of that many, but you have to put yourself out there. I compared it a little bit to like blind dating and online dating kind of combined in one, because you kind of just have to throw yourself out there and like post on these groups of like, hey, I'm new to the area, or I'm looking to get together. Does anyone want to meet up for like a coffee or a drink or go for a walk and like that? But I was
is that hard though? Because I feel like I mean it can be taken the wrong way. You can find yourself in situations where there's a misunderstanding about intentions. It's like, my wife's on this app called Peanut Butter and Jelly. She's a mom, right? Yep. And so And so she's going through the same thing because we just relocated, right? So she's a mom to little kids, and she wants to go to the park and play together with other people. You know, so she's on peanut butter and jelly, and you swipe left, swipe right. You know, it's kind of like the same deal, right? And she tells me it's just for moms. I hope she's not lying to me. But anyway, point is, she's swiping peanut butter all over the place. She's meeting people. Yep. But I mean, in that situation, it's for moms with kids. Are there like similar things for platonic relationships? Yeah.
And I will say, when it comes to like these different expat groups, whether it's on Facebook or wherever you find them, there's so many people out there who are in the same position. You know, folks who've relocated anytime in the last year and are like, all right, I still don't know that many people. I just want to get together. I met up with a group of, you know, other American expats or folks who had studied abroad in the US, things like that. And we went out for barbecue because some people were just missing that taste of home.
How's the barbecue in Singapore?
It actually wasn't bad. I was pleasantly surprised. It was more like Texas style barbecue. But it was, you know what, for being in Singapore, I would say it was pretty good barbecue.
That's awesome. Chris Lagerman says, Linden is a rock star.
Thanks, Chris.
He wanted to make sure I said it properly. I'm sorry. Rock star. Love you, Chris, man. Chris is my guy right there. Let's see here. We've got some awesome. Okay, so Janet's got a question about this.
Great.
Great. Questions are just coming. They're flowing. It's happening. Janet says, is Linden living on an American or expat community area? Are you in like an area for expats or Gen Pop?
I will say I have fulfilled a lot of stereotypes. I will own that now. I am very much your like stereotypical millennial expat.
Do you have a driver?
I don't.
Okay.
But I use Grab, which is like the Singaporean equivalent to Uber. Because with that and public transportation, there's no need to have a car, and it's incredibly expensive to have a car here. But I do live in a neighborhood that is very like expat heavy. It's because it's really convenient. Like it's close to like the.
I love the hand gesture.
It just is. I'm really close
Rationalize
to like,
your ethnocentrism. I love it. No, I'm just kidding. No, but we've had you know, it's funny. We've had global mobility professionals from like say like South America or Africa on, right? And you know, and this debate comes up, right? It's like, you know, especially from like a DE&I perspective, are we giving people a true authentic experience when they come over and they're not living like a normal Brazilian or a normal African? They're living like a, you know, in this kind of bubble, right? And are they developing as a person? Are they able to relate to their coworkers, et cetera, et cetera? I'm not putting all this on you right now. I hope it doesn't come off that way. But this is a question that, and you know, it's interesting to just debate, because I'm with you. I'm like, give me the Grab, give me the American layout with the big kitchen if you got it. Air conditioning's a must. Like I'm be honest with you, I'm high maintenance like that. But I mean, is air conditioning even a thing? Like, or
yes. Oh, absolutely. There's air conditioning everywhere. If you go into like a mall or a public space, it's almost like over air conditioned to the point that like you need to pack a sweater sometimes if you're going into an office, because you'll probably be cold with like the temperature difference.
I like it.
But yeah, I will say all of those comments about, you know, do you integrate into the local community versus not? It's something I thought a lot about as I was planning to come here. I think in some locations it's easier than others. And in Singapore, I think there is just such a large expat community that it's almost harder to, you know, try to have more of that like local experience. And some of that's cultural as well. When you hear like some of the cultural descriptions of like, I don't know if you've heard the analogy of like the coconut and the peach, but like Easter. Yes. So, you know, it's coming into more of a coconut culture where it's a lot harder to, you know, it takes a long time to
tell everybody about the analogies, the fruit analogies, please.
Yeah. So, so as Americans, we tend to be more of peaches. So we're like soft on the outside. It's, we're really good at like the superficial. It's easy to make like a quick friend and talk about things. We're more than happy to like dive into conversation and to build those quick connections. But then it takes a lot longer to build the really deep. So we're soft on the outside, and then we've got that kind of like harder pit on the inside. So easy to make quick friends, but takes a long time to really build those deep connections. And then in the coconut, it's hard on the outside, soft on the inside. So it takes a long time to, for lack of a better term, to break in, to build those connections. It's more of like a longer view. You have to build the relationship slowly to get to the point that you're then comfortable talking about some of the personal things and truly consider someone a friend. I think one of the things in the US, everybody's like, yeah, I've got tons of friends, everybody I meet is my friend.
2,000 Facebook friends. Yeah, exactly. I got 1 million followers on Instagram.
Yeah. And being in Singapore and in a Southeast Asian country, it does take longer to build those relationships. And, I'm here on assignment. I'm not going to be here for, a permanent basis. So building those connections with, local Singaporeans is challenging. That's not to say that it's something I'm avoiding by any means. I am trying to meet people, and
you're not avoiding it. You're just not living next to them. Let's be clear about this.
Yeah, so true. No, and that's also true. And honestly, some of that comes down to the way that Singapore is structured and the housing options here. It's, there's very different setups of, most expats live in condos. So we're in, we typically rent condos that are owned by an individual, but most locals don't. I think it's something like 80% of the population here lives in, they're called HVDs. They're the housing developments, and they're more regulated in price and also in like demographic breakup and everything. So some of that plays into it as well, of just like the local regulations and where is it easy to get housing and where is it not as easy to get housing as an expat.
I love this conversation. We've got some great questions coming in here as well, and comments. Vinny's chiming in. Vinny Valverde. Yeah. He says that's how I learned English when I first landed in the U.S. I used blind dates instead of paying for language lessons.
There you go. I can see that working.
I can't imagine like Vinny on a blind date, fresh off the plane from Brazil, like super nice guy, like just, I don't know, communicating in sign language. Like, I don't know, Vinny, what are you doing? Like, we just go to a club and just dance all night so you don't have to talk. Vinny, I need more information. I love it. I need more. Jackie says, I was often warned that American friendships are superficial. Jackie, what do you think now? I was just using Jackie for a Clubhouse invitation. Just kidding, Jackie. No, seriously, what do you think? Was that true or not? Let's see. We got a question here. Oh, question. Did you move your household goods?
I did.
Question. Yes,
well,
you did.
I moved some. I rented a furnished place.
Because that would have been really weird for your fiance, probably, if he came home.
Right.
Also, good for God, he probably would have got the wrong
everything. Yeah, probably would not have gone over well. But I did just like an air shipment of like more clothes and my bike and some of those smaller things. And that was actually kind of a fun experience because I had everything packed when I don't remember now if I was in Switzerland or if I was already in Singapore by the time things were packed. So like my fiance got to have that part of like the transfer experience of like he met with the movers for the survey and for the packing and all of that. And I kind of just had to trust that he included everything I needed.
How was your move? How was the house? I'm always curious about the household goods. How was your household goods move?
It was incredibly easy. Like I said, I didn't do a lot. So like packing and everything was super quick. But everything got here in one piece. There were no issues. Things were packed very well, and everyone was so helpful and so nice.
Let me ask you, all that really matters. Were you very satisfied with your overall household goods moving experience?
I was. 5 out of 5. Very satisfied.
5 out of 5. Hosea Botley. Hi, Ben and Linden from Universal Global Relocations coming in there. International household goods mover extraordinaire. This is great. Let's see here. We don't have a ton of time. I want to get to all of this. Jackie says, yeah.
Yeah.
I had to get used to what still feels like oversharing. We Brits are pretty reserved.
Yep.
Well, hey, welcome to the show. This is oversharing.com here. Elizabeth's laughing at Vinny.
Yeah.
Says, this is great. Jana's got a question about your social situation. Have you tried the Pivot app?
So I have not. I will say I've looked into it, and I think it's a great platform and a great resource. And I know that they've been putting a lot of work into expanding their kind of their coverage and their presence in the different markets. So I think it's great. It's not one that I have tried though.
Cool. Let's see here. Hosea says, thank you, Linden. We aim to please. Yeah. Did you fill out your survey afterwards?
I think I did. I tried to be good about that. I'll be honest. I used to be horrible about doing surveys and I would never do them. And then in this industry, I was like, no, surveys are important. We need that feedback. So I try to be really good about giving it.
People lose their jobs over surveys in this business. Okay. Like seriously, like people like, oh my gosh, I can't even, that's a whole nother show for another time. It's so intense.
They've taken on a whole new meaning.
It's so serious. Val says, what is one thing? Okay, here's a great question. What is one thing you have experienced in your relo that you would have never thought was a thing? Things like maybe you heard about and then like you get there and you're like, oh wait, that actually happens?
Yeah. Oh man, that is a good question.
This is one of my favorite Reddit things. Like I always read these whenever like people on Twitter saying they found out this thing was actually a thing in America. Like all the school buses are actually yellow. I thought that was just in the movies.
Okay, I will use I've experienced this a little bit before, but I will say vending machines. And by my temporary housing, when I was first here in Singapore, there is a salmon vending machine. You can buy fresh salmon out of a vending machine, raw salmon on like the street.
It's like the vending machine like 33 degrees or something? Like, is it cold at least?
I hope so. I was not brave enough to try it. I'll be honest. I saw it and I was like, that's very intriguing. I don't know if I'm that brave.
Linden, I will Venmo you. I want you to buy it. I need this in your next post. I need you to do a video for me of buying salmon out of a vending machine. I need this in my life. And then you got to take a bite of it. Okay, that's all. Okay. I'll pay for the salmon.
But that's a good idea. I should do a whole blog post on like the different vending machines and everything. There's also like fresh orange juice ones where like you go and it's like $2 or something, and it's like fresh squeezed orange juice. You get to watch like the orange halves go through the process. So I'll go try some of the vending machines and I'll take some videos to show everyone.
I would love that so much. That would bring me so much joy. I always thought that they should have vending machines in bars. Like we see the wine ones where they can like pour, but like mixed drinks, cocktails, whatever, like pour me a Long Island iced tea. There should be like an assembly line spouts thing that, I don't know. I feel like that's a thing. They should do that.
Yeah. Embrace in Switzerland though. I even saw vending machines for cheese in Switzerland. So I guess checking out the vending machines has been a source of entertainment for me this whole time.
Gosh, that's like a Twitter account, vending machines. This is great. Nori checking in from Furnished Quarters, Boston.
Yeah.
This is wonderful. Linden, did you do a top 5 today for us?
I did do a top 5 for you.
Top 5. We need like a top 5 like sound. We need like a sound effect. Like
your little jingle confetti. Or something.
Yeah, we need a jingle. Yeah. Hey, Stacy, can you get on that? Can you make a jingle on confetti cannon? Right? She's laughing. I'm like, hey, no problem, Ben. No. All right. Let's see. So, Linden, what's your top 5 today?
So, my top 5 are just things to know about going on international assignments during a pandemic.
During a pandemic, that's normal.
Because it's so normal. Yes.
Number 5.
Number 5 is that it really is a great opportunity to just get to know your new city or country. I met up with some expats. We had a ladies' night and had cocktails the other day. And one big thing is folks coming into Singapore, and I did the same thing. As you're planning your move, you're looking at like, all right, where are all these places I'm going to travel? You know, what weekend am I going to go to Bali and do all of these things? Which
Bali.
it's not an option now because I can't leave Singapore because I can't come back into Singapore if I do leave. So it's been a good opportunity to make me kind of just like focus on exploring everything there is to do in Singapore. And I would say the same thing when I was in Basel of, you know, I didn't have the, you know, the option really to just travel throughout Europe. So I took the time to get to know Basel a little bit more, and I went on a lot of walks and hikes. So that would be my big thing is, you know, try to find that silver lining and focus on getting to know the new area.
Awesome. All right, number 4.
Yeah, so it's even more important to engage with local subject matter experts. I'm a big proponent of this anyways, of like use your destination service provider, you know, find those local contacts, you know, work with your immigration and tax professionals, all of that. Even more important to do that now because things are changing, and they are a great resource to let you know, what are the changes in, like lockdowns or restrictions, what stores are open, what apps do you need to download so that you can continue to live life without going outside? How do you order your groceries? All of those different pieces.
Love it. Number 3.
So we talked about this a little bit, but yeah, meeting new people, I really feel like it's like online dating. You just have to put yourself out there, but I encourage anyone in this situation to do it. There's so many other individuals who have moved to a new city or country recently who are in a similar situation and want to meet people. So I encourage you to be brave, have courage, put yourself out there. The worst that's going to happen is that it's a bad conversation, or you meet up with someone and you're like, okay, I never want to talk to you again. So be smart about it, but try.
The murder rate is super low in Singapore too, correct?
Correct.
Cool. Number 2.
Quarantines are tough, but planning helps. So when I got to Singapore, they have the mandatory 14-day quarantine. I was in a hotel room for 14 days with no balcony, no opening windows, none of that. The only time I left was on day 10 to go and get another COVID test. And that was also within the hotel.
Which you were probably super stoked about too. You're like, yeah,
oh, it's fantastic.
Out in the hallway.
And I got to like step outside because it was on a balcony. It was great.
That's tough.
But quarantines are a part of traveling and moving now, and they can be tough, but it's very possible. Hundreds of thousands of people have gone through quarantines at this point. I really encourage people to plan. Some of the small things can make a huge difference. I read, again, there's a lot of Facebook groups and blogs and everything out there, some of which are filled with horror stories. So be careful with that. Some of my colleagues can attest. I got myself a little worked up before my quarantine of reading all of these like worst case scenarios. I was like, oh my gosh, it's going to be horrible. And it wasn't. But there's also really good advice in some of those. Something as simple as like, I took a set of silverware with me because they brought meals to my door 3 times a day, but everything's served in plastic containers and with plastic utensils. So I took a plate and I took silverware so that I could have some semblance of normal. And even just planning things like creating a routine. Admittedly, that also then gave me the routine of like, I had to wash my plate and silverware 3 times a day, and finding ways to like work in exercise, all of those different pieces.
It sounds like jail. Like you're like washing your plate and your silverware. It sounds like, it sounds rough. How do you keep mentally, like, how do you stay mentally strong when you're doing like solitary confinement in Singapore? It's brutal.
It's coming up with a routine, finding some way to move and be active. I was lucky and I had space. I had enough room that I could put a yoga mat on the floor, like blocking my front door and all of that. But I had space to do that, and working that into my routine of just doing something so that I didn't just like sit at the desk or on the bed all day long. And I took things with me to do. So, and don't get me wrong, I watched way more Netflix than I will ever admit to anyone. But I took books with me. My like quarantine hobby that I picked up, even in just like the start of 2020, was I learned how to knit. So I took a knitting project with me, just different things like that, so that you can fill your time. And if nothing else, it's a great way to get over jet lag, because you have that time and you can just get yourself on a routine.
Wow, cool. Number one.
Yeah, so number one is that there's just a lot of uncertainty and frequent changes with travel restrictions, quarantines, all of that. Like I mentioned before, it just adds a lot of stress for assignees and their families. I kind of had the positive side of some of these frequent changes of the day before I left for Switzerland, they changed their quarantine requirements. And because their case rate was getting higher, I no longer had to quarantine when I first got there. So like that change worked in my favor. It wasn't good news for Switzerland, but it was good news for me. But it's just a lot of changes. You know, folks are probably planning when they're going to be able to see their families and all of that. And it's harder to make those long-term plans. So just being mindful of that, and just providing as much support for everyone as we can.
This is great, and I do have a question about that. But first, Sue Carey says, "I've enjoyed hearing from you, Linden. Your comments on your experience are really insightful and encouraging. Thanks for the show, Ben." Oh, thanks, Sue.
Thanks, Sue.
But I wanted to ask you about travel restrictions. When am I going to get Singapore? I was supposed to come to Singapore last year. Okay, I've got an invitation. Dang it, and I want to get down there. When can I get there?
Don't plan for this year.
I got my vaccine. I'm getting vaccinated, my second shot in like 10 days, and I still can't come this year at all, you don't think?
Well, then you're way ahead of most of us here in Singapore, because here it's still only I think they've opened it up now to folks 70 and older are getting vaccinated.
Oh, wow.
Going into this, I was like, oh, I'm going to be in Singapore. I'm going to get vaccinated way before all of my, family and friends back in the States. Probably not going to be the case. But at this point, the latest I saw is last week or the week before, they came out and said that, by the end of 2021, they should be open for personal travel. So they haven't said if that's still going to require quarantines and all of that, but they're being vague.
Yeah, sure. So. Well, let me flip the question. When do you think you might be coming back to the States? All of your friends want to know.
I'm really hoping that I'm going to be able to come back to the States over the summer. I'm hoping to be able to make a trip home, but right now, in order to come into Singapore, you have to apply for entry approval. So just having your visa or whatever is not good enough. You have to get approval from the government to enter the country, because they're limiting how many people can come in. They're limiting, I've talked to people from the UK who went home for the holidays, and while they were in the UK, their entry approval was revoked because of the new variant and cases spiking and all of that. So you have to apply for that approval to entry. You can do it up to 30 days in advance. So before I leave Singapore, I want to make sure that I have that so that I have a good chance of being able to get back in. So I'm hoping this summer, I'm hoping I'll be vaccinated, and then maybe that means I won't have to spend 14 days stuck in a hotel room.
Maybe, hopefully. Right. Linden, this is so great. I've really enjoyed talking to you, and you've been amazing with your experiences. Keep those blogs coming, because it really is an opportunity for all of us to kind of get a peek inside of the assignee experience. So it's really been wonderful. I really, really appreciate it.
Great. And Ben, thanks for having me and giving me the opportunity to share some of these little pieces with all of your followers and fans.
Yeah, this is great. And thanks everybody who was watching. We had a bunch of people on LinkedIn and Facebook and YouTube as well. Hit that like button if you haven't done so already. Throw a little heart out there to Singapore for Linden. Thank you everybody for getting involved. Love the questions. The show's always better when you get involved. So thank you for stopping by. And if you forgot, I looked ridiculous a year ago. So there's that. So if you're feeling down today, at least you don't look like that. I mean, that's something, right? But great pigtails. It is. Sure is. Well, it took forever to braid. Thank you, everybody, and we will see you tomorrow. Take care, y'all. Bye.
Bye.